with technology,
Hmm.
you could technically start a business in a box, and everyone has a carbon copy of the same thing. But what sets us apart, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's still, as humans, there's something that attracts us to certain types of things, whether like certain types of humanness, right? Or whether
Yeah.
it's spirituality, or like, for example, going to I have a friend, he was telling me, he was helping his wife start her own practice. She's a doctor, and it was a tech first practice, right? And they were building all the
Mhm.
tech and making it really cool. But what she said and what stood out was that they were building it for, to have it more intimate, right? Of like understanding. So it wasn't, so even though it's still like, prescriptions and things like that, and not the, what do you call it when it's the more non-prescription, bum. I'm blanking out on the name, but like the holistic,
Oh, yeah.
alternative
Hmm.
medicine. It's not that, but she would
Hmm.
still, create these connections and actually understand her patients, right? And actually understand
Hmm.
like a little bit about their life. What does it look like, as opposed to just, writing a prescription, but just being like, understand like what's actually going on. And just kind of, to me, that's like reimagining like healthcare, right? To have a little bit more
Hmm.
context of, well, before I prescribe you an antidepressant, or before I prescribed you, whatever, let me just understand a little bit about what's going on in your life. Is it something that this is like constant, or is this something that's because there's something happening right now? And I think that that's something that's very unique and that's very different. At the same time, she's introducing tech, creating how we can be more streamlined and make it so that you can log in and have all of these things, which I think is great. And I think that's what a lot of people are yearning for. Gen Z, like, don't listen to, like, to talk to people and things like that. But that's a good example
Hmm.
for me of like that, again, maintaining that human connection, that human touch, and something that's unique that you can't get out of AI. Otherwise, we're just AI is just going to reproduce the same content over and over, and we're just going to be carbon copies. And then it's like, well, what's the meaning of
Yeah.
life? Why are we even, why are we even here? So.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you bring up this sort of parallel, comparison of like, you know, medicine, something that you would think is very human centered to begin with,
Mhm.
still has this split between like, yeah, big business, pharmaceuticals, like prescription, like, diagnose and move on, versus this more like intuitive kind of like psychosomatic, bridging into also like what is the actual medical need, right? Like a lot of times, folks will go to the doctor and say, I'm having palpitations, right? Heart palpitations. And then after kind of a little bit of discovery and exploration, they understand that actually you don't have what we would, kind of name as a disease or a condition, but rather it might be psychosomatic from things like stress or a
Mhm.
change in your environment. And it's just as important for, those types of medical professionals to approach situations like, hey, there could be multiple truths. Yes, you're having palpitations, but you're also having something that might be driven from something that's not necessarily biological, but more, psychological.
Mhm.
So, in this sort of comparison that you brought up, how do you do that though in tech? Like, I feel like that's where we're going to continue to see AI being used like it is right now, but that's not to say that that is the capabilities of AI. Like, one of the things I want to get into a little bit later, which we can jump into right now, is like, what does it look like to have Black AI? And there are people who are, kind of going off on that exploration of like, for like, how would that even be different than what we have now? And I think it gets back to what you said, which is around agenda. We're going to continue to see AI being used as a tool in service, almost in a labor sort of way, the way that we've been seeing it, than maybe what it could be on a more creative, on a more sort of like pairing between human and sort of like technology than what we see it right now. We see it very much like kind of like a servant in like a weird way, like do this for me,
Mhm.
rather than how can it work with humanity to better humanity
Mhm.
while also still kind of being technology, right? Like we don't want it to be human. We want it to kind of stay in its lane, but we also want that lane um, to assist,
Yeah.
It's kind of like lane assist, but a different way, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like right now, like for a lot of folks, I think for a lot of folks, like AI is still kind of mystic and not really sure what it is or how to use it. But I think in the mainstream, or what's becoming more mainstream, is Chat GPT, Perplexity, large language models, generative. Hey, y'all having a chat conversation and using it, kind of replacing it with Google, and even what we're seeing in businesses a lot, whether it's Microsoft Office 365 Copilot, or every little application has their own little AI. So like Salesforce, Einstein, I believe, right? And you sit there, chat, and have those type of conversations, and it's being marketed as like this co-pilot, or I've seen people call give GPT a name, and it's like that's my best friend, because they found a way to use it, and I think that's a very good start. I think that is a good way to use it for what's in front of us. Because it can help you be more productive. It can help get your creative juices flowing. If you're a small business, especially like, let's say somebody who's a graphic designer, you really have to, in my opinion, you have to change the way you work as a graphic designer. And but how can you leverage AI to assist with that? What used to take a few days for, 5 to 6 conceptual designs by one person can really be done in 10 minutes with GPT. And for a graphic designer, that's something that you can have GPT build an application, get this information from the client, and then go from that, right? Help get their inspiration, build something out, like a different type of approach. I think this is great for what's in front of us, but I think thinking of AI as this co-pilot, these big businesses, these corporations are not thinking about how to make a individual's life easier. Yes, that's obviously how we can use it, but they're thinking about how can we swallow businesses whole